Hello, everyone. It's Mr. Barden here. This is going to be my discussion of arrays. So let's just hop right into it. This will probably be a little bit of a shorter video compared to what I've done in the past. So arrays. I'm just going to hop in and say that they are more similar than you might think to what we've looked at before in variables on this channel. And in fact, they work basically the same, starting out. Uh, Basically, I like to think of an array as basically a more advanced variable. The key with a variable is that you can store one piece of data in it, and you can look at it and do stuff with it, and you can replace it and update it as you need, for as long as the code is running. A variable allows you to make a list of multiple values that all have the same name, so you can kind of group them together. That's You can see I came up with that very clever title to this page here with that logic. Um, but that's basically the idea, is that you can take multiple values and list them all out and store them and be able to refer to either all of them as a group or individual ones, and they all have this same label, which is like the name of the variable. So I've got right here this code that's going to be drawing this brown square on the canvas right here. I'll kind of move that up so that way my face is out of the way. Um, and this is perfectly fine for things we've done before. If you've never used arrays and you're kind of following along, you may want to say how much red, green, and blue to put into the coloring, which is what we have going on here. Um, and you'll have to manually check all of the red, green, and blue and swap them out. And with this particular one, if I click the mouse, it changes from brown to green. All right. And that's, pretty straightforward, but there's better ways to go about this. Mostly because we're having to maintain less resources and we're not having to allocate 6 variables. We're just making 2 arrays with the code I'm about to show you in a little bit. We aren't having to update and check all the things, but mostly it's just easier to see and understand, and it's just a better way to organize all of this data. So let's look down here. This code will function the exact same. I'm clicking my mouse, and it's changing the color, but I've arranged this a little bit differently. You'll notice that it takes up less lines, not that many, but less lines, and it just looks a lot cleaner. So what's going on is right here we're filling with square color 1, square color 2. It's just one name right there. And if we look up here where we're globally defining these, we're making let square color 1 just like a variable. But then we've added these square braces after that, the equal sign, when we would normally just assign it a single value, like we have up here. We've added these square braces, and now we are listing out the different elements for this array. So again, the whole thing is called the array. The individual values inside, all of which are separated by commas, are the elements of that array. So we have that there. But you can see with fill, we can very handily just give it an array name, just the name of it, and that'll give us everything in here. And if our array contains 3 values, it will automatically be filled in as a red, green, and blue value to set the color. So it's pretty handy like that. And this is the first way that we can use arrays, and that is just by referring to it just like a variable by name in order to say, hey, look at the entire contents of this array. So, I'm going to say, if it's, if the mouse is pressed, we're going to fill with everything inside square color 1, which is this value, which makes that color green when turned into RGB. This is a little bit different than when we look at the individual elements of an array. So I've got this set up right here, and it looks pretty similar. But you'll notice that we don't have a color anymore. Instead, we have it's just kind of gray and black. but we have these same values right here. The big difference is that now we are looking at a single value instead of all three, these multiple values that are stored in the array. And to do this, we type out the name of our array just like we did before, but then we go in and we add these square braces afterwards and tell it which uh, which item to I'm sorry, I can't even talk. Um, which index of the array, that's the position edit, and so we'll look at a very specific element. So the elements are the numbers themselves, and they get placed into an index in the array. So we can monitor not only the value and what that is, but where in that list of the array it's located. So, and that's what we have happening right here. So we'll say we're going to fill with square color 1, but specifically whatever is inside of index number 2. And over here we have square color 2, whatever's inside of index 0. I wanted to point this out that computers, generally speaking, start counting at 0. It's what's called 0 indexed, which means that, whatever the first thing we see, that's position number 0. And then we go to 1, 2, 3, and so on, like normal. But whatever the first one is, that's position number 0. So looking at the array, here we have, position 0, and then position 1, and position 2. This is one of the reasons why we tend to start our for loops with let I be assigned 0. That's why I do that a lot, is because the computer will start working at 0, and when we combine for loops and arrays, that'll just make life a lot easier. So that's what we have here. So in this case, we are going to fill with square color 1, position 2, which is 45. Whenever you give fill a single number, it's always on a gray scale between white and black. So that's how we get this gray. And then when we look down here to fill square color 2, position 0, we know that we're filling that in with the 111. So when we click the mouse, it's really close to black. When we are not clicking the mouse, it's kind of midway between black and white. Okay, so that's the main part there. I'm just kind of explaining this in the text on the page if you were to read that. But I'm going to point out here a handy little tool. So this is how one way, I say, we can cycle through elements in an array. And there's multiple ways you can set this up, but I think this is kind of a fun one. So rather than just kind of talking about how I break it down in the text here, let's just look at the code. So I've made an array here. I should say Dr. Marasco has made an array, and I've tweaked things a little bit. But anyways, there's an array right here, and you'll notice it doesn't contain numbers. It contains strings. You can put any data type in an array. It doesn't have to be a number. It can be a number. It can be an array. You can put arrays inside of arrays, strings, objects, all just tons of stuff in an array. As long as it's an entity that is able to be recognized by the computer, you could store it here, essentially. That'll become a little more clear, I think, when we start looking at some of these objects and classes and things like that later on as we get more advanced. But just know that it doesn't have to be just numbers. That's the takeaway from my little rant there. Okay, so we're also making two just regular variables, and they're both being assigned 0 to start with. So we've got this function right here in draw, and we're just we're setting the fill, I should say, and we're drawing a rectangle. That's the only thing there. So what we have in the fill is kind of important. So we are gradually abstracting more and more from numbers and the computer code and things like that. So what we have here is a representation of very basic commands. So we're filling, we're setting the fill with a value from the square colors array, which is what we have here on line 5. what value is going to be specifically whatever number is stored inside of the current color variable, which for now is 0, so we're going to fill in red. Down here is a function called mouse pressed. This is one in P5 that basically function mouse pressed will only do whatever's in its code block when uh, you click the mouse. It'll do it one time, boom, every time the mouse is clicked, that's it. So what we have going on here is we are going to just count how many times we've clicked the mouse. We're just increasing the click count variable by 1 every time we click the mouse. We are also going to say current color is going to be assigned whatever click count is, whatever we just updated it to, modulo 4. What this means is that I'm not going to go in through a super in-depth breakdown of modulo in this video, but it will keep things going 0, 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 3. That's it. There's even further ways we could probably abstract this if you really wanted to, but this is fine for now. But this keeps this cycling to 0, 1, 2, 3. That's it, which is intentional because if you look at our array of possible colors, we have 0, 1, 2, 3. And if we click the mouse, we'll see that 0, then it should be orange, green, and gold. And then back to red. So that is just one way that you can work out kind of cycling through these elements in an array to be used. You can use them for other things too. It doesn't have to just be colors, it can be whatever you want. This is just kind of to show off the concept. The last thing I want to talk about in this video actually isn't in the textbook as of yet. We're in the process of trying to work out some back-end stuff on the website. We're having some stuff that got changed without us realizing it. We're trying to fix things so we can update it and eventually add in an example like this one to the code. So I'm going to just pop up and make a sketch right from scratch. I'll have the link to this in the description down below if you want to check it out on your own. So let's just make an array. I'm gonna make some numbers is what we're gonna store in here. Actually, no. We're gonna just display some words. So we'll type in the square braces, and then Bob, Sally, potato, keyboard. I'm looking at what's around me. Cell phone, cat, coffee. Okay, I think that's enough to start with for now, but I'm going to set up this array, and I'm going to tidy up my code. First things first, if you have an array with a lot of values, the computer will kind of default to this vertical arrangement of them, which is totally fine. You just need to make sure that it's in between these these square brackets right here, and then you can just comma, next line, and so forth. So if you tidy your code and see this happen, that's okay. You didn't enter anything wrong. The computer just organized it like this so you can see more clearly how many things are in it. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is a similar thing. I'm going to say let current word be assigned click to pick. That's what I'm gonna have it say to start with. The reason I'm doing this is so we can display some text on the screen. So if we pull up the text function, we just have to say what to say. So I want to type whatever's inside of current word, and that should be a capital W. And I want to just put it in the middle of the screen. So right in the middle of the screen. I'm also going to tweak. I almost always do this This just lines everything up right in the center, so it's a little easier to see when we go. So I've got this right here, and I'm going to do a similar thing and say function mouse pressed, just like that. And what I'm going to do is instead, we're going to instead of cycling through this, if you may have figured it out because I typed that there, we're going to randomly select an element in the array. And what we can do is we can just say the current word gets assigned the result of the random function. And what we're going to give for the argument is just the name, my strings, or whatever the name of your array is. The random function is great. It does a few things. So it can take a bunch of different arguments, and I'll just pull up the reference material for it. So if you wanted to, pause the video and check it out in more detail, you can. But basically, random does a lot of different stuff. So if you give it a single argument, it chooses a number in between 0 and this number, not including the number. So in this case, it's going between 0 and 49.9999999 and so on. If you give it 2, it won't include that top end for a reason, but it will pick a random value in between those 2 that you give it. And if you give it, I'm basically doing the same thing here, and the name of an array, then it will randomly select one of the elements in the array. So this is what we're doing right here, and you can scroll through this, if you want to learn more about it. But anyways, so we're going to randomly pick something from this list of values, and because we are going to store it in the current word variable, and we are just displaying whatever that text is on the screen, we'll have this right here. So it starts again, click to pick, and actually I'm going to make my text size bigger. Oh yeah, just so it's a little easier to see. And now if I click my mouse, now we're getting Sally, cat. Cat, we got cat twice. Potato, Bob, cell phone, coffee, cat, potato, keyboard. We're it's randomly selecting it. Sometimes we get the same thing twice. Sometimes we don't. And that's just how we can randomly select things. So again, the key things to take away from this lesson are that we can group our variables together and store them in arrays. They can be any data type and even other arrays and things like that, and objects and a bunch of stuff. We can talk to the whole array and look at every piece of data stored in it just by referring to it by its name like a variable. We can look at a specific piece of data by, after typing the name, typing the square braces and the index number for that value. Again, the indexes, like everything else in the computer counts, it starts at 0. So in this one, we have 0, 1, and 2 for this 3-value array. We can cycle through it, and I kind of walked through a demo of that with using the modulo operation, which is handy, and we can randomly select things with P5's random function. So with all of that, we should have a good understanding of arrays and what we can do with them. Again, this isn't a super in-depth video. You can do a lot more stuff with arrays. I just wanted to show the basic idea. If you would love to learn more about arrays, which I highly recommend checking out, then if we just do a little Google search, JavaScript arrays, I tend to go to this one right here by Mozilla. This is not sponsored by in any way, but this will list out everything you can do with an array in JavaScript. So you can check out some of the more advanced things. There's a lot of them, as you can see, which is why we don't go through every single thing, but I like to point this idea out to my students. And usually I'll mention one or two as we go. Push and pop are useful for adding or removing things from the array. We can shift stuff around, put things in the middle, combine them. There's a lot of things we can do, but I tend to keep the lesson a little more general, and then we can make more specific. Look at more specific methods. Based off of various projects. So that's going to be it from me. I hope you enjoyed this. If you learned something, like, subscribe, answer with, comments if you got it. All the boring YouTube bits and pieces. Um, so with that being said, I will see you all the next time that I see you. Bye. I hit the mouse and my recording button stopped. Now, bye.